Have you ever noticed that money can change the way people behave? Not just what they buy, not just how much they work, but how they treat other people. What if simply thinking about money could make you less willing to help someone? It sounds ridiculous. So, scientists decided to test it, and some of the experiments produced surprisingly strange results. In one famous series of experiments, researchers wanted to know what happens when people are reminded of money. The participants weren't given huge amounts of cash. They didn't suddenly become rich. Instead, researchers simply exposed some participants to ideas and images related to money. For example, some people worked with money-related words or were surrounded by subtle reminders of money. Other participants were exposed to neutral objects and ideas. Then the researchers watched what happened next, and the difference was surprisingly consistent. People who had been reminded of money tended to become more self-sufficient. They were less likely to ask other people for help, and they were also less likely to help someone else. In one experiment, participants working on a difficult task were given the opportunity to ask for help. Those who had been reminded of money were less likely to do it, but it went in both directions. They were also less likely to offer help when another person needed it. So money seemed to make people think, I can handle this myself, and maybe you should handle it yourself too. But the researchers didn't stop there. They tested something even more interesting. What happens to our social behavior when money is on our mind? Participants who had been reminded of money showed a stronger preference for doing activities alone. They were more likely to prefer working alone, playing alone, and even maintaining more physical distance from another person. In other words, money seemed to activate a feeling of independence. That might actually sound like a good thing, and sometimes it is. Money can motivate people to work harder. It can make people feel more independent and capable, but there can be a downside. The same feeling of independence can reduce our need for other people, and that can affect generosity, cooperation, and social connection. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. Researchers later looked at something different. Does having more money actually make people less generous? In a series of studies published by researchers including Paul Piff and Dashe Keltner, participants were compared based on their socioeconomic status, and the results were surprising. People who considered themselves lower on the socioeconomic ladder tended to behave more generously and compassionately than people higher on the ladder. In one experiment, participants were given the opportunity to divide money with a stranger. The people who reported lower socioeconomic status tended to give more. In other experiments, researchers found similar patterns involving charitable behavior, trust, and helping other people. But why would having fewer resources sometimes make people more generous? One possible explanation is that people with fewer resources may depend more heavily on other people. When you need other people, relationships become extremely valuable. You may become more aware of what other people are going through, and you may develop stronger feelings of compassion and equality. But there's an important catch. This doesn't mean that rich people are automatically selfish, and it doesn't mean that poor people are automatically generous. Human behavior is much more complicated than that. Later research found that the relationship between income and generosity can depend heavily on the level of economic inequality around people. In highly unequal environments, higher income people can become less generous relative to lower income people. But when inequality is lower, that relationship can disappear. So it may not be money itself that turns people selfish. It may be what money represents: independence, status, control, distance from other people. And when you constantly feel like you can solve every problem yourself, you may have less reason to depend on anyone else. And that can subtly change the way you see the people around you. So, does money make us less generous? The answer is, sometimes. Money doesn't magically turn a kind person into a selfish person. But thinking about money can shift our mindset toward independence and away from social connection. And that means something as simple as seeing a pile of cash could potentially change what we do next. Maybe the strangest thing about money isn't what it can buy, it's what it can make us think. And sometimes, the most expensive thing we lose isn't money, it's connection. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more strange experiments and fascinating facts about human behavior.